Have you ever been treated like furniture in a house you helped build? Ever watched someone smile in your face while slowly pushing you out the door? Meet Margaret, a 68-year-old black woman with a spine of steel, hands that raised a son with love, and a quiet secret that could ruin a family or rebuild it from scratch. But before we get to the $5 million shocker, let's rewind. Margaret was no ordinary woman. She didn't just raise a son. She raised Daniel, a boy she adopted from the system when he was barely 5. Abandoned, malnourished, white. But Margaret didn't care. Love wasn't color-coded in her world. Daniel grew up with Southern cooking, gospel music on Sundays, and stories of civil rights heroes instead of bedtime fairy tales. And despite the stares from neighbors, "Is that your son?" Margaret stood tall. She gave that boy everything. And he loved her back. At least he used to. But that was before Jessica walked into their lives. Jessica came wrapped in pearls, privilege, and passive-aggressive racism. The type of woman who compliments your hair while asking if it's real. The kind who calls the police, just to be safe, when she sees teens in hoodies at the corner store. Margaret tried. Lord knows she did. She smiled through the icy stares, the microaggressions, the way Jessica would wipe the counters twice after Margaret touched them. She bit her tongue when Jessica accidentally called her the help at their engagement party. But Daniel? He was blind. Or maybe just spineless. Love can do that. Make a man forget who raised him. One rainy Sunday it happened. Jessica walked into the kitchen, her face tighter than a facelift. Margaret was humming to herself, stirring a pot of stew. Same stew Daniel used to beg for as a kid. "Margaret," Jessica started, not even saying Mom, "we've decided it's time you moved out." Margaret paused, wooden spoon, midair. Jessica crossed her arms. "Daniel agrees. We need space. For our family. Our family." As if Margaret wasn't the foundation of it all. And here's where I ask you, what would you do if someone tried to erase your name from the very story you wrote? Would you cry? Fight? Or wait? Margaret didn't flinch, didn't argue. She just nodded slowly. And that silence terrified Jessica more than any scream ever could. 2 weeks later, Margaret packed her things. No drama. No goodbyes. Just a quiet exit with a suitcase, a Bible, and a tiny lockbox. Daniel barely hugged her. Jessica watched from the window like she'd won a prize. But what they didn't know was this. Margaret wasn't broke. Margaret wasn't helpless. And that lockbox? It held the keys to a $5 million trust fund, left to her by a woman she once cared for as a nurse. A woman who said, "You're the only family I ever had." Margaret never touched the money. She didn't need to. But now she was ready to use it. Not out of spite, but to teach a lesson. Because when you throw out a woman like Margaret, you don't just lose a mother. You lose the very blessing holding your house together. You ever notice how gossip spreads faster when it smells like karma? Especially in the kind of neighborhood where folks mow their lawns twice a day just to feel important. The kind of neighborhood Jessica prided herself on fitting into, where everyone called her Classy Jessica, until Margaret's story hit the streets. Let's rewind to a week after Margaret's quiet exit. Jessica was glowing, smug in her victory. She'd finally cleansed her house of what she called old habits, like it was a spiritual detox. Daniel was less sure, but he'd learned not to argue. "Maybe we should have helped her find a place," he mumbled one morning. Jessica sipped her almond milk latte. "She'll be fine. That woman's tougher than leather." But Margaret wasn't just fine. She was thriving. She'd moved into a high-rise apartment downtown, paid in full for 18 months. And get this, she made the building manager put Jessica's name on the band guest list, just in case. But Margaret wasn't being petty. She had plans. See, her trust fund wasn't just money. It came with power, access, and most importantly, patience. Back in the neighborhood, things started to shift. It began small. Mrs. Langston from across the street knocked on Jessica's door, holding a peach cobbler. "Oh, I just wanted to say how much I miss seeing Margaret. Such a light in the community." Jessica forced a smile. Well, she needed a change. Mrs. Langston raised an eyebrow. "Is that what we're calling it?" Then came the grocery clerk. Jessica swiped her card. And the teenage cashier, a black girl with box braids and a stare that could cut glass. said, "Didn't you used to live with Miss Margaret?" Jessica nodded. The girl just smirked. "Damn shame. You ever been called out without someone raising their voice?" That's how Jessica started to feel. Everywhere she went, someone was staring, or not staring at all. Daniel noticed it too. He went to church alone one Sunday. The pastor, a man who once baptized him beside Margaret, barely shook his hand. After service, an elder leaned in and whispered, "Honor thy mother, son, especially the one who chose you." Daniel didn't have words. He sat in his car afterward and stared at his hands. Were they clean? Or were they just whitewashed? Jessica kept brushing it off. People are just sensitive. We didn't do anything wrong. But then came the invitation, hand-delivered to Margaret's old address, still in Daniel's name. A black and gold envelope. Heavy. Fancy. Inside, you are cordially invited to the Margaret H. Williams Foundation Gala, celebrating legacy and love. Hosted by Margaret. Sponsored by the Eleanor Wexler Trust. Beneficiaries? Black single mothers, aging caregivers, and Daniel's old elementary school. Jessica blinked. Who the hell is Eleanor Wexler? Daniel's jaw dropped. She was the woman Mom used to take care of in hospice. Jessica scoffed. She was a patient. She left her money to your mom. Daniel nodded slowly. Guess she saw her worth. And just like that, the pieces started clicking. You ever play a game thinking you're the main character, only to realize someone else wrote the rules? Jessica had thought Margaret was disposable, a relic, a burden, a reminder of a past she never respected. But Margaret? She was a queen the whole time, quietly moving her pawns, setting her stage. And the whispers? They weren't whispers anymore. They were echoes, bouncing off the walls of their empty house, their empty social calendar, and the empty seat at every table that once belonged to Margaret. Jessica tried to save face, posted fake smiles on Facebook, claimed Margaret had chosen to move. But screenshots of the eviction message leaked. A cousin of Margaret's, who worked at the moving company, had receipts. Literally. Don't forget to press that subscribe button to help us grow. Imagine kicking out the woman who gave you everything, while sitting on zero of your own. Would you apologize? Would you beg? Or would you double down on your delusion? Jessica chose the last one. She booked a spa day, pretended nothing was happening, even posted a quote, "Haters are just confused admirers." But baby, admiration doesn't come when your name's being whispered in disgrace. And karma? Karma doesn't forget. Ever tried to clean up a mess with gloves on? That's what Daniel was doing. Late night texts, voicemails, flowers, all that "I'm sorry, Mama" energy. But baby, some bridges don't burn, they explode. Margaret wasn't answering. Not because she was bitter. Because she was busy. Busy building something bigger than Daniel could ever imagine. Her foundation was live. Her story was viral. A local news interview had titled it, "From Kicked Out to Cashing In. The Mother Who Rose Above Hate." The comments? This woman is a national treasure. Jessica and Daniel should be ashamed. Imagine throwing out Oprah and expecting peace. Jessica saw the clip and lost it. Why didn't she tell us she had money? Daniel looked up cold. Why did you treat her like she didn't? Boom. First real argument in months. You ever notice how the truth sounds louder when it's whispered after silence? Daniel couldn't take it anymore. He went to Margaret's gala alone. Red carpet, flashing lights. Everywhere he turned, people were in awe of her. Margaret stepped onto stage wearing a deep royal blue gown, hair slicked back, gold earrings that danced when she smiled. She didn't just look rich, she looked royal. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said into the mic, "thank you for honoring not just me, but every woman who raised a child who wasn't hers and still loved them like her own." The crowd clapped. Daniel clapped too from the shadows. And then it happened. Margaret paused. Her eyes scanned the crowd and landed right on him. Silence fell. "Sometimes," she said slowly, "love isn't about biology. It's about respect. And when that respect dies, so does the relationship." Daniel's hand froze. Margaret continued, "Tonight, this foundation begins by giving back to those who see us, who fight for us, who protect our elders, who honor their mothers the right way. No names, No direct shots. But Daniel felt every word hit like a bullet wrapped in velvet. The next morning, he showed up at her apartment. Alone. No Jessica. No excuses. Margaret opened the door slowly, gave him one long look, and then walked away. Didn't say come in. Didn't say leave. Just turned and let the silence speak. Daniel stepped inside. "I'm messed up," he said, standing behind her. "I should have protected you." Margaret folded laundry like he hadn't spoken. Neat. Sharp. Like her spirit. "Don't forget to press that subscribe button to help us grow." "I let her disrespect you," he continued. "I don't even recognize myself anymore." She turned to him finally. Calm. Controlled. "No, baby. I don't recognize you anymore." Oof. What do you say when your own mama doesn't recognize you? You say nothing. You listen. You sit in your shame. Daniel lowered himself onto the couch. The same couch she bought for his college apartment years ago. Still firm. Still holding weight. Like her. "I was scared," he whispered. "Of losing her. Of being stuck in the middle." Margaret nodded. "You were never in the middle. You just chose the wrong side." Boom. That's when she opened the box. The one she took the day she left. Inside were baby pictures, adoption papers, a hand-drawn card from Daniel that read, "I love you, Mom, forever." And a check. Not for Daniel. For a school, a shelter, a scholarship. "Every dime I got," she said, "is going toward healing, not guilt." Daniel's eyes welled up. "I don't want your money, Mama. I want you." Margaret looked him dead in the eye. "You had me. You let her throw me away. Now you want me back after the headlines." And here's the twist. Margaret had rewritten her will. Every cent of the $5 million was already pledged. Daniel wasn't getting a dime. But you know what hurt more? She'd removed him as her medical contact. He didn't even have access to her health updates anymore. What's worse than losing the money? Losing the right to care. Losing the chance to protect. Losing your mother. While she's still alive. Margaret wasn't cruel. She was clear. She hugged him before he left. "I still love you, baby. I just don't trust you anymore." Outside the building, Daniel sat in his car and broke. Not over money. Not even over Jessica. But over the reflection in the rearview mirror. You ever see yourself for the first time? And not like what's staring back? You ever watch someone crumble in slow motion? Not from bullets or bankruptcy, but from a truth too heavy for their pride to carry? Jessica was unraveling. At first, she blamed Daniel. "You should have told me your mother was rich." Daniel just blinked. Would that have changed how you treated her? Jessica flinched. Silence. Then came the magazine spread. The woman who was thrown out and rose up. Front page. Glossy. Poised. Margaret sitting regal in a velvet armchair with the city skyline behind her. And the quote? "Phew. I may have lost a house, but I never lost myself." Jessica threw the magazine across the room. It hit a vase. The vase shattered. A metaphor for her composure. Don't forget to press that subscribe button to help us grow. The neighbors stopped waving. The invitations dried up. The HOA president forgot to remind her about the monthly meeting. Even her Pilates instructor canceled. Something came up. What came up was the truth. Jessica tried to clap back. Posted a thinly veiled Facebook status. Funny how people play victim when you just set healthy boundaries. Woman shrugging. The comments? This attached was the eviction screenshot. Your boundaries kicked your karma in the face. Girl, delete this. She went private the next day. Meanwhile, Margaret? She wasn't saying a word. Didn't post, didn't react. Didn't even blink. Because when you're sitting on $5 million and your dignity, silence is the revenge. But the streets? The streets were talking. Someone started a podcast episode titled, "When Becky Kicks Out Big Mama." And Big Mama buys the whole block. Even the TikTok girls got involved. POV. You kick out your black MIL and she funds scholarships in your name just to flex. Back in Daniel's house, the walls were closing in. Jessica's parents came over. Her dad, a retired judge, tried to mediate. "You should apologize, Jess." Publicly. Jessica exploded. Apologize to a woman who tricked us. Her mom snapped. "She fed you, Jessica. She loved your husband. That wasn't a trick. You were the test." Oof. Now she was alone in the room, and in her choices. Ever try to rewrite history while everyone's still alive to call you out? Jessica tried. Sent Margaret an email. I realize now how much pain I caused you. I didn't know you were going through so much. I hope we can rebuild. Margaret replied 4 days later. Thank you for the message. I've chosen peace. You're not included in it. Brutal, polite, final. Daniel tried to hold onto the marriage. Tried to bridge the two women like it wasn't already burned down. But here's the twist. He was no longer the man Jessica admired. Not because he changed, but because he grew. And growth? It made her smallness too obvious to ignore. 3 months later, Jessica was gone. Moved in with her parents. Filed for divorce under irreconcilable values. Daniel didn't fight it. Didn't cry. He donated half his savings to the Margaret H. Williams Foundation and showed up to help at every event. One day, he was packing canned goods at a food drive. Margaret walked by. Didn't stop. Just dropped a water bottle beside him and said, "Glad to see you're finally building something." He looked up, smiling. "You still don't trust me, do you?" She smirked. "No, baby. But I see now. Sometimes the revenge is not revenge at all. It's watching someone become better after you left them behind. You ever wonder what legacy really means? It's not just money, not a house, not some dusty old will in a locked drawer. Legacy is what they whisper about you after the room goes quiet. And Margaret? She left behind a whole chorus. It was a sunny Friday morning. Margaret stood in a modest courtroom. Not as a defendant, not as a plaintiff, but as a woman declaring where her story would officially end and where others would begin. A lawyer stepped forward, opened a sleek black leather folder. Margaret had rewritten her will. Again, for the final time. Daniel sat quietly in the back row. No camera crews, no spectacle. Just him, a notebook, and a heart finally wide open. The lawyer cleared her throat. Per Ms. Williams' instructions, her estate of approximately $5.2 million shall be distributed as follows. The room shifted. People leaned in. $1 million to launch scholarships for children of domestic workers. $750,000 to open a daycare center named Legacy House in her old neighborhood. $2 million to a black-led retirement home for aging nannies, cooks, and caregivers. But then came a name that silenced the room. To Mr. Daniel Williams, Jessica's name was nowhere in the document. She could be in the next galaxy for all Margaret cared. The lawyer continued. A monthly $1,000 contribution to his charity work, for as long as the foundation continues to serve low-income communities. No lump sum, no inheritance, just a monthly reminder of what it means to give, not take. Daniel smiled, not out of pity, out of clarity, because when your mother teaches you a lesson, even in death you better learn it well. At the funeral 6 months later, people flew in from across the country. Women Margaret mentored, kids she sponsored, patients she once cared for. A choir sang a change is going to come. And when Daniel stepped up to speak, his voice shook, but not from grief, from gratitude. My mother didn't raise me to be rich. She raised me to be right, he said. And I failed her, but she still gave me the tools to fix what I broke. And here's the twist, if your brain hasn't caught fire yet. The final check she ever wrote was to a local bank. She'd purchased a house Jessica kicked her out of, renovated it, turned it into transitional housing for elderly women who'd been displaced. And the name? Painted in gold above the door. The house that hate couldn't keep. Jessica found out on Instagram. A viral post read, "She kicked her out. She bought the house and turned it into hope." Comment section? This is billionaire level petty, and I love it. Who needs revenge when your glow-up funds a movement? R.I.P. Margaret. You did what needed to be done. Now here's the thing about stories like this. They don't end in courtrooms or funerals. They live on in the people who changed because of them. Daniel went on to found a mentorship program for adopted kids, especially those in interracial families. And every time he spoke at schools or community centers, he started with the same line. I was raised by a queen, and I let her down, but she taught me how to rise anyway. So let me ask you one last time. What would you do if the person you disrespected turned out to be your greatest blessing? Would you chase money or a legacy, status or soul? Margaret already chose. And now the world knows her name. Don't scroll just yet. If this hit you in the gut, like, comment, and follow Black Untold Stories. Because the people we overlook are often the ones we'll never forget.